What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Make Impact Podcast with real stories, real people, and real impact. My name is Stephen Turnbull. I'm an entrepreneur, a husband, and a father that's on a mission to empower individuals to share their stories so they can make an impact on you. Man, am I excited for you to listen to today's episode. We had Bill Klehm, who is the chairman and CEO of eBliss Global, and we were also joined by the mayor of Utica, Mayor Mike Galime. We talked about everything that's happening right here in our city of Utica, New York when it comes to eBliss, the manufacturing plant they're bringing in, the why, the how, and everything in between. You're going to love this episode. Appreciate you being here. Let's get into today's episode. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Make an Impact Podcast. I have a super special episode today. We have the chairman and CEO of eBliss Global, Bill Klehm, on the show today, and the mayor of Utica, Michael Galime. How are we doing, gentlemen?
Doing fantastic.
Doing awesome. How you doing?
Thank you guys for taking the time. I think this is a really rare, unique opportunity to have you both in and talk about what's going on and the excitement around this. Before we get into all the details we want to talk about, if you'd like to start with just a brief intro.
Sure,
and then
absolutely.
Mayor, a brief intro, and then we'll get going.
Hi, Bill Klehm, Chairman, CEO, eBliss Global. Grew up in Detroit, wanted to work for the Ford Motor Company since I was a little kid, got that chance, and created an entrepreneurial journey about 18 years ago, and wonderful to be sitting here now taking one of my dreams and building it here in Utica, New York.
That's incredible. Mr. Mayor?
So I'm currently sitting as the mayor of the city of Utica. Grew up here, same type of story, went to U of R, came back, but had a career in the tech industry. Most recently, financial technology, hardware, software integration, production, building things, market sector development. And last summer, Bill Klehm was in to figure out where they might want to site eBliss here in our area, specifically downtown Utica. And we clicked because we have kind of a shared parallel LinkedIn history, even though I'm the mayor right now. And we've salmon laddered this thing till today, and I'm glad to be on the podcast.
So, well, again, thank you both for your time. Bill, can you start with just telling us what is eBliss?
Sure. So eBliss is a design, manufacturer, and distributor of electric assist bikes. That's what we do. So we are the only manufacturer that is placing manufacturing in the U.S. This will be the first e-bikes ever made in the United States of America.
Wow. Right here in Utica.
Right here in Utica.
That's incredible. Mayor, start by telling us about last summer when you and Bill first met and what's that brought us to of what's happening today.
So a shared colleague, Vin, that we both know, gave me a call and said, hey, this guy Bill Klehm's in town, would like to see a bunch of locations to possibly manufacture e-bikes. Okay, I told all the office staff, I said, hey, we got to schedule some meetings. I want to spend some time doing this. And ultimately, we drove around for an afternoon looking at probably 6 or 7 different locations, settled on kind of the downtown North Utica Harbor Point type of area. And I had a fun day, with Bill.
We had a fun day.
We talked about, the gate process of getting a project through, the corporate, bandwidth of what you go through. And also, he said, hey, we're going to build these bikes here. I said, wait, what are you doing? So we were sitting down at Utica Roasting and having a conversation. I said, if you want to build them here, how far do you want to take it? We immediately launched into a conversation about the workforce that's here. And I started rambling off names like Utica Metals and Fountainhead Group and Pacemaker and all these other local companies that are still strong manufacturing, like shipping stuff out of Utica. He said, well, what are they doing? I said, they're welding, they're blow molding, they're stamping metal work, they're doing all this stuff. All of a sudden, here we are today. You want to take it from there? You
Sure,
want to just launch off that?
Absolutely. Yeah. So the original plan was to come to Utica and assemble bikes and distribute them across the country. But one of the things we quickly learned is the manufacturing capability of the community is still pretty good, right? There's a lot of functional. When you look at 160 parts in a bike, right? That's all there is. A car, by the way, has 63,000, just to give you perspective. But 160 parts, and you look at each step is a process, right? Each little step. And so when the mayor and I were kind of reviewing what is currently being manufactured here, we realized almost every manufacturing step is competently displayed by a commercial enterprise here in Utica. So we went from knowing that we could assemble and build these bikes here to being confident that we could actually build a supply community out of Utica. And one of the things I think is super powerful is creating this government and industry partnership. And what I found with the mayor, which has been fantastic, is that guy, right? He knows manufacturing, he's got a ton of experience, and he's open to the fact that economic development comes because companies and government come together around the purpose of building an economy, right? This economy was fantastic 50 years ago, right? Lots of manufacturing, great infrastructure, and over time, the U.S. made a decision to outsource that manufacturing. Well, now the penalty that we're all facing is we got to bring it back. 163 parts, not too hard to do. A great mayor that knows how this all puts together, so I don't have to create a sentence and then build him a picture. He knew how it worked. So, anyways, it's been fantastic.
What led you to, prior to that day of driving around, what brought you to Utica in the first place?
Great
You've
question.
got a little bit of a history here already.
Yeah, I know.
Yes.
So I mentioned I work for Ford Motor Company. Buffalo, New York, I built a large factory in the late 90s, early 2000s. So I had a very large operation there. So upstate New York has been a friend of mine. And I would say this to this day, one of the best teams I ever had work for me was that group of people. Weather, not so great. Team putting it together. Yeah. Then the second thing is that our largest investor is actually a Utica native. So he actually lives here. And so one of the things, he's been fantastic on supporting the company. So one of the things I wanted to do is to support his legacy in this town. So Vin Gilroy, we talked about, he's a local accountant.
Sure.
Michael Marizio, who's our largest investor, is a local guy. His family's deep embedded roots here. And so, quite frankly, I wanted to give back to Mike and show that legacy and invest back in him. So to do that, we all agreed that we were going to put this factory here.
Also, the bikes are already sold here.
Yes.
There is a location here selling the bikes, and just to throw something out there that's wild, right? You remember last year's Boilermaker?
Yep.
We had the emergency, which the person was fine after the fact, but we had that deer runner accident, that collision on the course. Yep. The two bikes that had our firefighter EMS personnel responding to that person on the course were eBliss bikes.
Wow.
That the fire department...
Wonderful story.
Exactly. And it was about a couple months after eBliss outfitted them for EMS response, and they were being utilized at the Boilermaker. And that is how that initial first response got to them on the course, were the eBliss bikes.
That's
so this
incredible.
isn't just recreation. This isn't just fitness. We've already worked together to actually outfit Utica with a more modern response force with these bikes.
That's so cool.
Actually, and if you don't mind, I'm going to grab that. So think about the state of New York, right? Little known fact, 5th largest economy in the world, right? Bigger than most countries. And you think about when I first put all this together, and the local sales rep who covers New York calls me up and he says, I'm just calling you to say thank you for the job. Well, nice guy calls. He said, no, you don't understand. When I walk into a bike shop in New York State and I tell them the bikes are made in the U.S. and made here in New York, I get all their attention. If you just think about what the mayor just talked about first responders, one of the segments that we think is hugely important is that segment. And if I just look at what could be sold in the state of New York, I can make a business just by selling bikes to states and municipalities. And now I've got, again, a mayor that had the progressive thinking and the vision to come help me go do this. And we got a governor and we have other people that are all aligned with doing this. It's really interesting that the alignment of doing this crosses party lines, which I think is super important, because everybody is responsible for jobs, right? And everybody is responsible for the environment. And what I think about us is we're doing both.
Yeah. Mayor, for the listeners, can you walk us through, you get that phone call that, hey, Bill's coming to town and this is his idea and this is what he wants to do. As the leader of the city on that side, walk us through that process. You drove him around to see everything, but from that point where Bill says, hey, we're in on Utica and we want to make this happen, what does it look like from your standpoint?
So from my standpoint, I take every one of those calls like it's real. Because if you don't treat it like it's real, you don't end up standing here today talking about it.
Totally.
Absolutely.
Right. So from my perspective, I'm went over to urban and economic development. I said, listen, her name was Lee at the time. I said, let's immediately have this person start tracking this like a project manager. All the contacts, everyone they've met with through economic development at the county and state level. And from that very point, we started assembling. If they're looking for a location, fine. In my mind, a lot of the conversations you and I had, I was asking you a lot of questions because I immediately launched this into, if they're going to come and assemble bikes here, we had just finished through City Limits doing a manufacturing series to highlight the workforce and all the pre-existing manufacturing that's still strong here. So we started connecting the dots on all that. We made sure that they were aware of the manufacturing program where they have the curriculums they'll build up for manufacturing houses at MV. Okay, so an immediate leverage into make sure a Bill Klehm knows all of the opportunity in the most real sense, though, without any lofty promises. It was all very direct and all very real, so that Bill could go home that day, go back to his investors that day and explain what's possible so we can actually work together.
And I just want you to just kind of soak that in, right? When, as a CEO of a company trying to build something, and I think of myself as a builder, having somebody sitting next to you, not across from you, sitting next to you and saying, let's go do this together.
Yeah.
But somebody who has the back wheel to know that it can be done. I grew up in Detroit. I was a machinist when I was 16, 17 years old. I worked in factories. It's not too common for a machinist to be 16, 17 years old today. But that's the future in America, right? These jobs are going to come back. Why not incubate them here? Right? Why not incubate them where you've got a government entity that wants it, right, and is willing to invest the intelligence? Because it wasn't just, I want to do this.
Yeah.
It was understanding how to partner with me and go do it. As I said, this is not for the faint of heart doing this thing, right? Saying you're going to start a business and going to do this. This is difficult. So it's wonderful to have that kind of partnership. And, when I walk around, the day we announced this, I went and had pizza down at a local pizza place. I can't remember the name of it, but I'm wearing this shirt that I'm wearing today. And after I had done the last series of press things here, I had 5 people from the restaurant come up to me and thank me.
Wow.
Right?
Yeah.
And when you think about that, the community where people feel comfortable enough, they see your brand, you're wearing it. They don't know me from Adam, right? This guy in cowboy boots running around Utica. And they come up to you and say, thank you. It made me know that we're making the right decision when the people are that appreciative and they recognize it.
Well, so what's interesting with that too, and I feel like this was part of it last year, there's a vibe in our community still.
There is.
Right? Every single person that was walking by us that me and Vin were pulling in to introduce to Bill, it was like, oh, welder, you owned a company, you figured out how to bootstrap yourself. We still, in this community, absolutely raise kids and raise families and teach people in the schools that you're going to create something. Okay, you're not going to be a consumer. You're going to be a producer. This is absolutely a producer mentality here still in Central New York.
Totally agree.
And I feel like that's a big part of it because every single person we introduced you to almost told the story of here's how we bootstrapped the very successful business we're standing in right now, which gives everyone the idea that, wow, this is kind of an area that is truly full of opportunity. Scrape off all the things people complain about every day. You look at what's really going on here, and it's phenomenal.
Yeah.
Hey, listen, you said twice, right? Community. This is about bringing together a community. We talked about this earlier before we went on the air, but in our life, right, we have these cell phones and we're so connected, but yet we're not, right? And so whenever I believe the power of the community is when you can bring together disparate people that are working on disparate things but see a common vision. And I don't think anybody who's listening to this or watching this would argue that more jobs is a bad thing. Right? I don't think anybody. More economy, right? More economy flowing through Utica is a bad thing, right? Nobody. It's really hard to argue about that. But it's very difficult to do it because of all of these conflicting things from politics to all kinds of stuff. But when you cut through it, just like I said, nobody can argue with more jobs and more income.
Exactly. and cut through it. That's exactly what I had in my mind. But yesterday, I mean, I was there.
I know.
So I was at the North Utica community meeting Monday, for example. And it was a room full of community members. By the way, North Utica is basically Harbor Point. You know, that's where you've located. And one of the biggest questions was, what is happening with eBliss? Is it real? And I said, actually, it is. They are planning on building the first bikes in the spring. They're looking at August manufacturing, you know, like rolling it up. And by the way, I'm on a podcast with them Friday morning. And they were like, oh, really? Because people have been saying, oh, it got announced last summer. Is it really going to happen? And listen, we are a community that is very skeptical.
Sure.
Right? So to now be able to show people that not only is this real, but we work on things for a good reason, that also gives confidence, not just in consumers and the economy, but the fact that we're making decisions that are valuable. And yesterday, I want to point out the fact that my chief of staff and I went down and took photos. We're going to be sharing them later of the effectively bike a rotisserie, if you will. You ever see like a car get restored and you build the rotisserie? They've got a very sophisticated turnstile manufacturing process that they're building up for these bikes. And I watched them start assembling that first bike yesterday.
That's incredible.
And Bill, you could talk about that because today's a big milestone. Today's a big milestone.
So when you kind of look at what's happened in transportation, I'll do a little history.
Yeah.
So in the early 1900s, right, when all the cars were starting to come out, there was no roads, right? There was horses, right? There was buggy whips. There was all those things. But what did consumers want? They wanted cars. So what happened post consumers wanting things? Government stepped in, created infrastructure, right? They created rules and regulations. They changed transportation. Wasn't that long ago, right, that we didn't have highways and roads. That all has been developed in the last 100 years. So when you think about e-mobility, I want you to think about that in the same perspective. Think about the fact that 2.5 million times last year, consumers voted to buy an e-bike in the U.S., right? 2.5 million. 2016, there was only 60,000 made or sold in the U.S. We talk about how fast this is coming. So what we decided to do was we decided to be able to take that segment and make it in America, right? And now we found the location, we found the community, we're now starting to build it. But when I tell you this is hard to do, this is hard to do, right? So sometimes these gaps between conversations, people start to question, rightfully so. But at the end of the day, we're doing this, right? This is now happening. So today, when you go through manufacturing process, all these things are in little steps. One of the steps you have to go through is you have to certify the product that you're going to make so the consumers can know that whatever you've told them, right, in writing, actually manifests itself on the unit. Yeah. So today is that certification step where we are going to certify the highest level of safety and quality that you can get for this kind of product. And this will be the first bike ever to achieve this certification in America, first one ever.
Wow.
And it'll be the first one ever made in America as well. So I came in, and I even cut myself yesterday putting a bike together. I came in to do this today and also to talk to all of you about it because this is a milestone, right? Made in America, people think about, made in America in 50s, 60s, and 70s, us deciding to export it ourselves, right? Everybody needs to understand the Chinese didn't come take this. We gave it to them, right? So now it's time for us to decide to bring it back. 163 components. That's a great place to start. It's simple. It's easy. There's already embedded manufacturing. Let's just organize it. But for me to do this by myself as a company that's originating capital and doing it, that's hard. Finding a partnership, right, and doing this together, that's one of the things that we found here in Utica, and I'm super proud to be here.
That's incredible. So we've talked a lot about it's happening, right? But expand on us, Bill, if you can. Like, what is happening exactly through your product? What can we expect? What should the community expect to see and the impact on that front?
So, again, exact timing, subject to everything happening, including the weather, because that's what happens. But our objective is this year, we will be manufacturing at scale here in Utica, New York. Again, first year is going to be a modest amount of bikes, just because I'm a big fan of making sure that consumer demand is really there. So I don't want to oversupply. So I like having balanced demand. So we're going to make, let's call it 8,000 to 10,000 bikes this year here in Utica, New York. When I think about on 2.5 million that are going to be sold, it's a fraction of the market, but that's a starting point, right? And it all starts with sticking a toe in the ground and starting to walk. And that's what we're going to start doing. So by end of spring, we'll be producing bicycles here, and we'll be shipping them to bicycle shops around the country. Like I said, state of New York is probably going to get quite a few of them, because the local rep is going to be very mad at me if I don't sell them first. Then the second thing we'll be doing is we are going to be looking to be able to sell these to government agencies within the state of New York. We think this is one of the most important things, is for the local agencies to reflect about the decisions they're spending to buy a $2,000 e-bike. Are they going to buy it out of China, or are they going to buy it from labor that's happening here in New York? We believe that just the municipalities in the state of New York buy almost 10,000 e-bikes. Wow. Just keep that in mind, right? The 5th largest economy in the world, as a government enterprise, buys probably 10,000 e-bikes. I can make a business out of Utica just selling to New York. That's the starting point.
Just to pepper it in, Utica, New York, as a municipality, needs anywhere between 10 and 16 of these bikes at this point. I just talked about the Boilermaker, right? But then when you think about all of our canal trails, our parks, and how to patrol that, but then people think public safety. One of the other uses I'm trying to break into is codes, right? The Urban and Economic Development Deputy Commissioner and I took the eBliss bikes last year on both a run a couple times to map out some neighborhoods. We were able to, we took some of the ones that can actually get through some off-roading stuff, and we were able to get through a lot of the land that we want to look at developing. But then also with codes, we're looking at the fact that if they want to do a code sweep and really do it efficiently, where they got to buzz through, they can throw that laptop and that notebook on their back, get on this bike, and buzz through a neighborhood efficiently on the bike. And also, by the way, the people working for us want to do it that way. They were like, oh, we can really do that? So it also makes work exciting again.
Sure.
So there's a need.
Yeah.
So when you really think about how many municipalities there are in New York State alone that would benefit from this kind of functionality, it's incredible. So to see it possibly built here is amazing.
Yeah. Bill, can you expand?
Not possibly. It's happening.
It's happening.
Yeah,
That's right.
Yeah.
I've done my research of looking into the company and your background.
Sure,
I want you to expand on what makes eBliss bikes different, because I think that's super interesting.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I firmly believe in is that when people are going to go make something, they should do their homework, right? So most bikes and e-bikes that are made because a Chinese factory spec'd something, and it was convenient for them to create a supply chain around a series of components. That wasn't designed for a specific case, for a specific use case. The one the mayor was just talking about, small off-road. What are you doing around that? What should you design into that bike to have that outcome? The second thing consumers don't want is they don't want the thing to break all the time. And they also don't want the thing to have some crazy maintenance issues. So everything we do is around creating a functional experience where the mean time between failures, right? So the time between failures is extended, if not eliminated. So everything we do does not have a chain. It has a belt, has a Kevlar carbon fiber belt, basically meaning you don't have grease on your pant leg. Yeah. You don't have to do maintenance. Everything we do is sealed. So all these things, rocks and water and stuff, doesn't get in to ruin your system. And everything we do has, again, a purpose. The battery is designed for a very specific usage case, right? How many miles you're going to go, what's your cycle. So all that has gone into developing these bikes. So we'll have 8 models that we'll come out with initially. One of the other areas I'm super excited about is called cargo and delivery. So cargo and delivery systems, thinking about even in Utica, right? How many people buy DoorDash, or how many people have things delivered to their house? You don't have to use a car to do that, right? Even in poor weather, right? People do enjoy getting out and going for a ride. One of the largest e-bike communities in America is Minneapolis. and that's not a weather favorable place.
Right.
I think I've heard that.
Yeah.
But so again, these things are paradigms that will shift over time. Again, keeping that perspective of history. 1900, there was no cars and trucks. Now they're everywhere, right? And now we're talking about consumers shifting how they think about things. So back to your question, we design everything for a purpose, and we spec every detail of that purpose. 99% of the e-bikes that are sold in America are not designed for that. And that's what we think is different about what we're doing. And again, obviously making in America.
Yeah. Mayor, from your standpoint, what does the community need to continue to do to ramp up for this opportunity and the continued success of the opportunity?
Well, one, get excited about the fact that we are a focal point of thought when it comes to new manufacturing and new business. It's a positive outlook for us. What we didn't talk about, right? We talked about a lot of the technicals of getting this here. But one of the other things we spoke about that a lot of people aren't thinking, they said, why Harbor Point? Why? Okay, so we're going to have an e-bike manufacturer on effectively the canal trails, okay? One of the other things that once the manufacturing is rolled up, Bill and his entire company wants to locate on this site because they want an experience center.
Yes.
Okay. So not only can they be built here, you ever read those articles about how if someone buys a BMW, they can go over to Germany and watch it get built?
Yeah.
Right?
Same thing.
That's what we want here. So you're not just going to come here to buy a bike. You could literally come here and say, okay, that's my base model that I picked, but I'm here today. I want that cargo rack and those tires, and I'm going to try out these hand grips and all that stuff. And that's how it gets built. That's how you write it out. Now, here's the other piece of that. Because we talked about the first day we met, I was like, no, let's blow this up. Let's have the real conversation like this is happening. Think about what we're also on Amtrak. Okay, when I worked in Manhattan a lot, I didn't drive down. I took the train down. Okay. So this isn't a possibility. This is going to happen.
Yes.
All of the people in New York City who use e-bikes can now take that train up to Utica, New York, build their bike, hang out here, understand why Utica Club is awesome, get a sandwich or some pizza, and then hop back on the train with their e-bike and take it back home to New York City. So this won't just be a manufacturing hub for these bikes. It's going to be an experience hub for these bikes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's literally sitting on the canal trail you can ride them on.
So it's so fun to sit here and talk about it. So I'll give you one of the other interesting pitches about Utica. So little known fact, 40% of the U.S. population is within 250 miles of Utica. Just let that soak in a little bit. 40% of the U.S. population, the largest economy in the world, is 250 miles from here.
That's why I've never had to move.
So-
People say, "Oh, why are you still here? Why are you still here?" Because I've worked globally my whole life. From Utica, New York.
And so for me, right, we can ship a bike to a bike shop overnight, ship them one bike to be purposely delivered to a consumer within 250 miles. That's a one-day delivery.
By the way, the ground shipping, people don't realize this. Utica, New York right now is one-day ground to almost the entire state.
Yeah.
Not Syracuse, not Albany, not Rochester, not Buffalo, Utica, New York, because we genuinely are the center.
Right.
We're on the thruway. We're on a train hub. We have all those components, but we're also right below the Adirondacks, right above, down
Finger Lakes, you got all this stuff.
And we're right smack dab in the middle on the thruway of everything.
So the other thing to think about, you got 350,000 people that show up in this town in the sports center, right? That play hockey and do all these things. Think about being able to showcase e-bike manufacturing right across the street from
So
350,000. And then the other thing is, well, our recommendation always is for the right consumers to ride the bike. So we're very focused on over 16 years old, right? So we think if the federal and the state, people believe that consumers can ride a car at 16, we think they can ride an e-bike. So that and wear a helmet, these are things that we just will live by. But to his point, this is here now, and we have this opportunity to do this today. This combination of events, 350,000 people, that's families, right? We can expose them to the best riding. We can expose them to, ride shares downtown, going from the hotels, all that stuff the mayor and I have talked about. The next step is to find those opportunities to build those use cases here.
I love the premise of the conversation of how well this partnership is working. You started with that,
Yep.
and your standpoint, how important that is. Talk to us about the jobs, the impact in this area for the jobs, and on that same conversation, what can we as community members do to help you further?
Great questions. Let me contrast this. So when I look at Austin, Texas, where I live, right, this style of partnership is the same style of partnership that has allowed Texas to thrive, right? And I built a business in Texas before, and the partnership was fantastic. The same, if not better, thought process is happening here, so let's just keep that in mind. For us, the direct job count is probably initially in the first 12 to 18 months, probably 40 people, probably. But that's just our proper. How many people are going to be making the subcomponents in the area, and what's that job impact? That has the opportunity to be hundreds of jobs, right? Because if you think about it, now we're going to expand a half a person over here, one person over here, two people over here. So the whole community comes up. So to me, that's the economic development. It isn't that we're going to build, 150,000 square foot factory and put 800 people to work. This is about getting the entire community, and we are the incubator for that to happen.
Well, and the other thing is that's the strength and resilience people don't realize we still have.
Absolutely.
Instead of one giant factory in Utica, New York, we still have, say, 150 small to medium-sized businesses pumping out goods and shipping them out there. So one of the things we talked about over the course of this developing is, okay, step one is build it here. Step two is have a couple of the components built here. Step three is like actually welding the frame here,
Yes.
that type of level, full on build the entire thing in Utica, New York, right? Mm-hmm. But the key is once, eBliss is at that, say, 10,000 bike mark, right? One of the things we talked about, especially once we got into like AIM at MV and the manufacturing programs, Bill wants to say, okay, we're ready now. Let's have a manufacturing conference and put a disassembled bike on a wall and have all these manufacturers come in that are local and say, hey, we could build that. I could build that. Maybe we could
That's
build
awesome.
this.
Yeah.
Let's stand up a new line on our floor. And this isn't about how many people we could pack into the eBliss four walls, right?
Yeah.
This is about we're going to bring in something that can scale through the local economy that exists, make us stronger, make us more resilient, and give each different space and different silo or sector new business that they can sustain into the future, so our kids also can still work here,
Yeah.
right? That's the piece.
So just adding to that, so the global manufacturing community that makes, the 20 million e-bikes that are sold around the world, the global manufacturing community is watching. So I've done this before. I made transmissions. I invested $165 million into a transmission business and built 800 patents around a drive system for the European e-bike business. That's what got me started doing this. So now it's about doing this here. But the global supply chain is watching. So we have already had a number of suppliers from around the world all call and say, can we co-locate with you? Right? Can we come in and can you do our parts distribution for our service for all the other e-bike manufacturers? So we're already entertaining those conversations. So while we're going to be looking at the community for manufacturing, we're also going to be looking to bring in other people that want to come and invest here out of Asia because they want to have that localization, because everybody is now believing, right? I mean, we had an election, somebody won as a result of Made in America, largely. I mean, that was a huge thing.
Sure.
That has not gone away. That's actually gotten bigger. There is a lot of skepticism out there on Made in America, right? There's a lot of people that want to discount it, but take it from a guy who stood at a machine tool and had to make $1 million of something perfectly. You can do that here, right? This is not forgotten. This is just us deciding as a country we're going to do this. And it takes people like me and the mayor coming together and saying, let's do it. That's how manufacturing is going to be reborn in this country, not by somebody making a mandate and somebody building another data center. That's not how manufacturing is going to come back. It's going to come back because people decided to go do this, bring the community along, have a partnership. That's how this is going to happen.
And that's the key. You asked me this earlier, like why and how.
Yeah.
Of the million things I could have directed my time in, or
Totally.
urban and economic development's time, I said, listen, this is a viable reality. let's spend time concentrating on the fact that this is a possibility that could be transitioned into a reality, not just for Utica, New York, for New York State. The other thing we aren't talking about is, let's say some of those seats or saddles, if you will, are manufactured in Utica, New York now. Okay, you mentioned this to me a couple months ago. If people start spooling up these lines, it's not going to be restricted to the eBliss company.
Exactly.
If a company here starts building a handlebar, a grip, a saddle, a brake mount, if other companies want to utilize that product, the other factories in our area that are making that product can now ship it elsewhere.
And they're winning. Yeah.
So if this becomes that, right? If they're selling 100,000 of those pieces to eBliss, now they can sell 100,000 to another manufacturing line. It's just something that can genuinely grow. So you keep asking me, how should the community be prepared? I think we need to mentally prepare ourselves.
Totally.
We need to have a mindset that this is happening. This is not just self-actualization. This has been transitioned into reality. And we need to just double down on that. And it's I'm not asking for toxic positivity here. What I'm asking for is absolute realism, because we're building bikes in Utica.
Because it's happening.
Yeah, and I think this is really interesting because, the world loves to watch a train wreck, right? So we all love to negative, right? So nobody stops on the road to celebrate these things, but everybody watches them. So we have a general society of being skeptical and everything else. I think at this point, everybody's just got to decide, do you want to get behind something? Because it just doesn't happen. People have to make it happen. And one of the things that I ran into in upstate New York from my history, and I grew up in Detroit, right? So it's still this Midwest mentality. These are the best people in the world to make stuff happen, right? And if everybody just decided, suspend disbelief for a minute, and let me just put my shoulder behind this, amazing things will happen in this community if everybody gets behind something like this. Again, believe, don't believe. But if you're going to build a future for your children in this community, you got to dive in. One of the things the mayor said I just want to touch on is the general education of the community that you guys have is amazing, right? You have lots of universities. You have a very skilled workforce. The interesting thing is many young people, and I've talked to lots of them, want to stay here but don't have the economic opportunity to stay here, so they leave. They love what they grew up with, and they come back in the summertime, but they'd like to live here. And so I think that's part of our responsibility as doing this, is to build that community. It starts with one little incubation, right? And then it expands from there. But if people believe that that's possible, imagine what happens if you decide to lean into it versus drag it back, right? What are you as an individual in the community going to do for your future? Are you going to lean into something, or are you going to cut it down?
Right.
So to me, lean in if you want to make a difference for your family in the future. If you want to be a lemming and sit by the side, decide you're going to be negative about it, right? That's what everybody's individual decision. But each person that's positive, each positive event builds on each other, and that's how these communities come. I can tell you from Texas, that's what Texas does, right? These people in these communities are really proud of this, and that economic development comes from the grassroots, and that's what we're doing here.
The other thing is, and it's funny you keep mentioning Texas, because prior to being mayor, right, my last stop in the private sector was Keysight, and effectively the home base I worked out of. If you wanted to put a pinpoint, GPS locator on where the 300-person office was connected to our little office in Utica, New York, it was Austin, Texas. And it is that same mentality. It's a bootstrap mentality. Let's get it done. So that is an interesting parallel that we immediately started. I was like,
Totally.
oh yeah, keep Austin weird. You got bats everywhere. There's bats here. People like to work in both places. No, that's awesome. But no. So the other thing that everyone needs to understand, and this is everyone from a little kid who's 3 years old all the way up to somebody who is a government official, leading economic development or business development for Central New York. It takes 20 tries to win one. And too often do we double down on something and it doesn't pan out, and people kind of say, oh, yeah, we're done.
Yep.
And, a lot of what Bill and I are trying to talk about isn't that it is negative here. It is very positive here. That's why this is happening here. But also, we have to treat 20 opportunities absolutely like they're all going to happen. So that one of them happens. I'm glad this is the one that's happening right now. But that's the mentality. We can't just figure out perfectly how something is going to be at the end game and be like, all right, that's the one we're going to do.
Sure.
We got to roll. We got to roll forward and, take not big risks that's going to hurt things, but risks in time, risks in thought, risks in really going down the road of not a what if, but we can make this happen here. And that's why we're on this show today.
And I think it's also this whole notion of taking a risk in the opportunity, right? And so, again, if you don't do anything, you don't get anything, right? So again, you got to go stick your face forward. What do you invest in? How well do you bring the community along? What are you doing? This communication is great. This is super important to talk to the community. One of the things that was announced a couple weeks ago is we're exploring the opportunity to go public and do a public event, right? So we announced a merger, the exploration of a merger with a public company, and because I believe that this message resonates best with the retail consumer. They're buying 2.5 million of them a year, right? It's growing 35% a year. So obviously they're interested in the category. Why not create the only made in America one, and why not create it as a public vehicle? So this is one of the areas that I'm passionate about, and I was meeting yesterday with some local officials talking about this. But again, our objective is to make this thing one of the best companies in the world in this segment, and to make it so it's made here in Utica, New York.
Super cool. We got to wrap up because I know you both have very busy schedules. You have a bike to build today.
I got a few to build.
I have a selfish question that I have to ask you.
Yes, sir.
I was listening to another podcast you're on. We're on the Make an Impact podcast, of course.
Okay.
And I stopped and rewinded like 5 times to write it down.
Lord. Oh, no.
You said that those of us that have the opportunity to make an impact on the planet have the responsibility to do so.
That's one of my...
Expand on that for me.
Gosh. So this is me being a dad, right? Because I got a kid that started a business. But anyways, so I believe that those of us with the capability of being able to see these opportunities have the responsibility to go make them happen. Because if we don't make them happen, nobody will. So that's one of the things I truly believe. Those of us who have that capability have a responsibility to use that capability. And that has been the passion of my life on doing all the crazy things that I do. And this is my latest investment in doing that. I believe that I have a responsibility to make this industry better, and I believe I have a responsibility to help the U.S. become a manufacturer again. And so I have the capability of doing it, so I'm going to go do it.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Mayor, some closing thoughts?
I'm sitting here, 46 years old, with a beautiful life in Utica, New York. So I just want people to love where they live.
Yeah, I'm into that. Bill, thank you for taking the time
Really
to join us
appreciate
today,
it, guys.
Mr. Mayor. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Everybody, that's another episode of the Make an Impact podcast. Until next time, go out there, lead with purpose, and make an impact in someone's life today, even if that's your own. My name's Stephen Turnbull. We'll see you next week. Take care.